So let's go give you a good overview, all this stuff. Like the thing that I like to do with my talks is never talk about things that are so grandiose or highfalutin. I want to give you all just like really, really, really grounded best practices and actionable things that you can take today and go back to your teams and companies and see some success. So we're going to talk about some keys to success, some best practices, go over some case studies, and then some time specific, a lot of time for recap and Q&A. All right. Yeah, so I just kind of talked about this. Really, just give you practical guidance, help you create a sustainable self-service, high-velocity data culture. So, who am I? Why should you listen to me? I'm the shit. Really, I am. Seriously, right now, I'm the CEO of Meroxa. We build a platform that allows engineers of any technical ability to use real-time data to solve problems. All right. I'm also an angel investor, so I see some of y'all out here. Thank you. You bought my mama a couch. I've been an engineer, so my very, very, very first job was at Microsoft, and Azure Blob Storage is my college research project. Worked at Intel, worked at Cisco. That's like my engineering street cred way back in the day. Also was the first PM at Zendesk back in the day. Visco, Heroku. Shout out to my home team over here. Twitter, and I've been the founder. So I had a couple acquisitions, some other things. All right, so kind of know what I'm doing up here. Again, I said I was the shit. All right, so um, but the interesting thing is like every place I've gone, I've done the same couple of projects. All right, which is one is an internal admin panel, which is like clearly my thing, right? Like if you need an admin panel to be done or some internal tooling called Devaris Brown, that is like my brand. And the second one is a consolidated data platform. Literally everywhere that I've been, all of the aforementioned companies literally have built the same project again and again and again, which is why we started Meroxa, right? Because I just got tired. One day at Twitter, boss was like, yo, we need a consolidated data platform. And I'm like, look, if y'all are spending $22 million a year on this, I probably should go start a company. And that's what we did. So talk about a little bit of some of the greatest hits that I've had that were built on data-driven experiences and have created massive value. So the first one at Twitter, this is kind of one of the things that I thought was pretty cool. It was a product called Monviz. If you go on engineering.twitter.com, you can read all about it. But we were doing 12 billion observability events a minute, and we're growing at 75% year over year. Only Facebook and LinkedIn were larger than us, I think, at the time. Fun fact: we only use about 3% of that data. So at its peak, so Twitter was a multi-billion-dollar company every quarter, and only 3% of that data got used across the organization. So when I got there, they had a hodgepodge of observability tools. Some were homegrown and made because, if you all remember, at the time there was no Datadog when Twitter was founded. So they built things like Storm and Heron and all these things that are now basically like kind of the foundation for data processing and all that type of stuff. But a lot of people had left. And so you basically had like these glorified hack projects that were running in production for many years. And there were no semblance of utility or usage across the organization. And so we basically, as a team, just decided like, hey, if we were going to build a massively scalable, distributed, kind of observability system, what would we do? We looked at pretty much everybody that was off the shelf, Splunk, Datadog. I'm naming names here so y'all can hear the pain that we went through, because I'm sure that some of that pain is probably felt amongst the group. But literally talked to everybody that you can think of, and even thought about using some of the stuff that was off the shelf. But we ended up having to build our own. And man, every tweet, every interaction on the tweet. So that's like, favorite, shares, views. Every single time somebody posted something, we would have to monitor those things. In addition to all of the infrastructure stuff that was handled. So Twitter is just a collection of services, and so we had to get all of the information off those services. Also, fun fact: we didn't have tracing until this project on any of that. So you can actually send a tweet and not know what services it hit throughout the thing. And once we did that, we realized that we had like 60% of the things that were running in production were actually we didn't even need to use. So that was one of the byproducts of this. The other thing too that this also helped us out with is understanding performance at scale. And so one of the interesting things that we found out was like a lot of services that were run were not optimized for distributed traffic, right? I always wanted to know in college, like, hey, what is big O notation used for? I found it out at Twitter, to be honest, right? Like, there's just like little things that you find out. And so, yeah, just having the ability to collect all of these events at scale across all of those services, and then being able to visualize that on the graph in real time, I mean, it's pretty cool. So, and then being able to do like the walk back, that was the other thing that was really cool. Is like we ended up using, believe it was Flink, to do essentially do all of the joins and stuff on the data that we had, so we can start doing the preponderance of data, so that now when you get an event that says, hey, this is above our threshold, now we can actually see what it looks like. We got the logs, message, and trace metrics and traces all in one place. So it's pretty cool, if I say so myself. Second, kind of big project that I led was at Visco, Visual Supply Company. How many of y'all are photographers out here? Use our filters and all that type of stuff. Thank you. And so one of the interesting things was every Friday to Sunday, we would DOS ourselves because we were essentially just a giant WordPress site. So people would wake up on the weekends, take a bunch of pictures, and upload them to Visco. And every single Friday, we would like go down, right? And so and then one day I had the bright idea that said, hey, why don't, I'm seeing a lot of traffic over in China. Why don't we, localize our app into simplified Chinese? And then literally DOSed ourselves again, right? And it just kept happening again and again. So we built this separate pipeline that essentially ingested all of that data every single time as a service that would ingest a photo. And essentially, we built a kind of a machine learning pipeline that would auto tag each one of those things. So instead of all these photos that were coming in real time, we basically had an exclusion list. So if we figured out that it was a screenshot, we just wouldn't allow you to post. If we figured out it was a diptych, right? Like you had a split in the middle. It was a mirrored picture. We wouldn't allow you to post if the saturation was over a certain level, or all these little rules that we had. We just wouldn't curate. And that was the interesting thing about Visco, is that every single picture that before I got in there, every single picture that got posted got a pair of human eyes right on that. So basically, so we can curate the best photos. And so at the end of the day, we reduced the work by like 80%. And then we reduced the amount of cost that we had for we were actually paying people to tag our photos, right? And that was something that was crazy. Like we had a 60-person curation team. We got them down to like 5, just basically building this process. Additionally, the auto tagging helped us with search as well. So if you can imagine, this is like when Hadoop came out, everybody was like, oh man, we want to do the Lambda architecture and all of that, right? And so we were having these pre-aggregated views and all of that. It really, really helped us, kind of excel there. The third project, Zendesk. So I was the first product manager there, and we were on API v1, had millions and millions and millions and millions of people using us, all types of customer service stuff. It was great, but we needed to transform from a product to a platform, right? And really, the way to do that was to basically start building a service that was understanding like how people are actually using our unofficial API, right? So V1 essentially was an API that people use, but it was unpublished. We had no documentation. People were just basically sniffing traffic in the browser to understand, hey, what calls you can make. And then we literally would see in our logs, like, Groupon is making, they took down gun deals in their thing, and now they have a bunch of customer service requests that are coming through their API. Lee was there; he knows that day, and so and so we see all of this happening through our API because they built all of these custom applications internally. And so we said, hey, this seems to be the next layer of growth for us. Why don't we figure out what API endpoints people are using, ingested that into HDFS, basically came up with a hit list of all of those, and those were the API endpoints that we built first for the customers, right? And so you can literally say, I wish I had like a graph like the last guy was like, when I got hired, here's where Zendesk was, right? And then we took off like a rocket ship into IPO. Also, too, the API v2 ended up being the foundational platform for all of the services that came, which were chat, help desk, Zendesk Sunshine, a lot of the independent products that they had, right? And it was all forced because of data. And then the last one, typical random standard thing. Worked at Microsoft, probably like half the room here at one point. And so basically just built the automation framework. We were ingesting data center events, and something happens, go over a threshold, essentially just respond to this stuff in real time, and really had real time analytics and status monitoring across largest instance of SQL Server around the world and things like that, and it really reduced. I think we saved them like $60 million in data center administration costs just through the automation, but just by understanding how to ingest data in real time and respond to events. So I kind of know what I'm doing. We kind of figured this out. How many of you all look like this today? You have every single vendor in every single way. Yeah, don't lie about it. Like some of y'all are out here. The reason why you get paid so much money is because you know how to navigate the boxes, right? Let's just keep that real. But literally every org kind of looks the same, right? Everybody has data silos. There's really no source of truth besides that person's Excel file over in accounting, right? Like that is the one thing that we know that is true all the time, right? All right? All right, probably not. And then time to value is actually measured in months, and there's a whole bunch of wasted resources. So essentially, like, we know that orgs want to look like this. Everybody wants to be an assembly line, self-sustaining, collaborative, able to iterate quickly, derive insights, innovate. But to get there are 4 keys to success. I'll give you the 4 Ps, right? Purpose. You got to give a damn, all right? You got to say that this is a problem that's worth solving, all right? Really what purpose means is that there's a collective understanding amongst the team of the ideal end state. I guarantee you, if you talk to the folks in your organization, across your organization, and say, yo, what is our stance on data? You'll get a bunch of different answers. How do we use data to drive the organization? You'll get a bunch of different answers, all right? At some point, you want the same answer. Everybody should sound like that cult drone, right? Like, when you go into Applebee's and people are singing happy birthday, you want them to sound like everybody's in lockstep, right? Took a while, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Second thing, people, all right? The person or group responsible for executing and maintaining the optimal state. So you got to find somebody that really gives a damn, right? They do not sleep until like everything is perfect. If there's a change that happens in the system, they will be sending you an email at 3:00 in the morning, right? You want somebody directly responsible that is the overseer of that vision, of that purpose. Because without it, everybody's going to go off into their own little silos to try to, have their own local maxima. But at the same time, it's like, hey, there's a way that you can be productive on your own thing and not run afoul of the entire system. I promise I'm not running for political office. That sounded like a campaign speech. But you really want to find somebody or a group of people that are responsible for this. Because without it, no matter what, every data project will fail. All right, process. And I'm a big proponent of process before platform, right? Figure out how people work. What are the repeatable execution steps that people have to get their job done, right? There's a study, UC Irvine back in the day. They had a mobility study, right? Like the campus. And they were saying like people were trying to figure out like, why didn't you put any cement down before you actually like, you planted grass first, all these walkways and all that type of stuff. So why didn't you put any cement down? They said, well, we just wanted to see where people walk naturally. Then we'll pave over it, right? So process before platform. And it's really just a set of coordinated actions required to repeatedly and predictively achieve the desired results. That's all you want, right? To go talk to people. So it's funny enough, as engineers, one of your jobs is actually go talk to your customers, all right? It's amazing what you'll find out. You'll find out that the reason why they use Excel is because somebody tried to build something internally that just didn't work. Every single person that's an enterprise company inside of here, your number one competitor is Excel. Not Snowflake, not Oracle, not what it's Excel. Literally, you can do everything in Excel, and that's what people are comfortable with. So try to figure out how you can see the processes they use and naturally augment that instead of trying to replace that. I know that's controversial, me being a data person that has a data platform, but I'm a realist as well, all right? And the last one, platform, right? It's just essentially just the systems that are needed to automate the process. So after you talk to people, after you see how they work, after you realize like the things that they're doing are non-optimal, you basically try to figure out how you can build around that, right? And accelerate that. I would give you some heuristics as far as like how to measure productivity, but look, at the end of the day, are people doing their jobs reliably? Are they doing their jobs repeatedly? And are they doing their jobs to great success, right, in the time that they need it? If you can answer that, then yeah, the platform works for you. Until then, probably shouldn't build anything. Any questions? All right, who remembers the first P? There's always one. Good job. All right, somebody give me another P. All right, good job. Y'all paying attention. I like that. All right, so go over some best practices. All right, so I'll give you some high level guidance, right? And some of this maps to the four Ps, right? So the first one is appoint a directly responsible individual, right? Again, you got to find somebody that gives a damn. That's going to be the overseer of all the changes, all of the headaches, all of the complaints for this, right? Because they're the ones that are going to understand how to best navigate the resources and the problems to get shit done, right? You have to be obsessed with customer and stakeholder success. Again, as engineers, you want to build, but do you want to build just anything or do you want to build the right thing? Right, right, right. So you have to go talk to people. You have to understand what their success is going to be. Anytime you sit down before you write a line of code, you should go talk to the person you're building it for and say, "Yo, how are you measured for success?"
What if there's a situation where the customer doesn't necessarily know what they want?
You have to guide them into that path, and you have to do it in a self-serving capacity. That's actually the best way. Just a little, sorry, as an aside, right? Like if people don't come to you with an agenda, you can craft that agenda for them, right? So now it's like, oh, you can use Meroxa with this and that, right? Like you want that to happen. Good question. Thank you very much. All right, second one. A third point: audit and gap analysis of the process and platform. I talked about this, right? And so as you are building things, something's verifying OneDrive. As you're building, you basically want to understand where the gaps in performance with the current process and the current platforms that they have, right? Really just sitting down and interviewing and seeing how people work throughout the day. And not only that person, but understand how the value chain flows and understand like, hey, once you're done building your thing, where does that go? Who consumes that? Who uses that, all right? And how do they use that? And go talk to that person and start to see like, hey, is the output of this thing exactly what I expected for the input of this thing, right? You're basically like building a human DAG, right? Shout out to DAGs here, the folks that are here, but you're literally just going out and saying, hey, does this work down the chain? And if it doesn't at any point, again, that's where opportunities for you to slide in and do some good work. Talked about this before. You want to build around the blessed cow path. So if something's actually working for you at the company, it's, find out what it is, see how it works. But again, you want to build around it, augment the people, be the Lucius Fox to their Batman, all right? Give them the tools to go do things that are heroic versus you just building for building's sake. And then the last thing is just measure the time to value, right? And that really at the end of the day, you want to figure out if I have a thought, that if I want to go out and answer a question with data, how long does it take me to get from question to identifiable result? Depends on the company because of all of the stuff that gets in between there. But establish a baseline first and then work your way back and figure out ways that you can optimize that. Okay. Any questions so far? Cool. All right, secret sauce. So I'll just talk about the real time. First one, self-serving, right? Y'all came here because, everybody's thinking about real-time data and streaming and all that stuff now. How many of you all are doing streaming or using real-time data at your company? Kafka, Pulsar, yeah, Meroxa, all these companies, Flink, if you're using that, yeah. You want to think real time first, right? Real time gives you the benefits that batch doesn't. One of the things is the granularity of data. And the other cool thing is that you can always go from real time to batch. You can't make batch faster. It's literally like a physics problem. And so as you're getting the events as it comes in versus you doing this giant lift and shift or automated copy paste, Pete, you missed a Daxter shout out that I had already. And so like you do all these things, And again, it's literally you can reduce the amount of footprint that you have. You can react in real time, right? Like that's one of the things that we've learned quite a bit over time. Uh, you basically need a known set of data components mapped to a specific need. All right. So if I am an analyst or if I am a data scientist, figure out what components that you need for ingest, transform, to do all the data munging, to store that data, to visualize that data, right? And just have one. Every single company I go into, depends on the team, everybody does things just a little bit differently. The nuance point of that is like the point of consumption can change, right? Where I visualize it and all of that. But actually building the data products, that needs to be stable and that needs to be a known set. People need to know that, hey, if I need to go understand what my sales data is doing, what my marketing data is doing, they need to know to go to one place, have one blessed workflow, and then they can use whatever consumption tools that they want to. But that data product that sits in front of that, that has to be set. The other thing, since you have somebody that is the directly responsible individual, have quarterly audits for relevancy and freshness. Right, like that's one thing that every time that I go into a new company or talk to a new data person, um, shit, even my own company, like data companies are notoriously bad for having analytical data, right? And so you really have to go and look at those dashboards, look at those charts, look at those spreadsheets that you're using to understand it. Is this data still applicable? Does it still matter for the problems that I'm trying to solve or the messages that I'm trying to communicate? Um, Another thing, ensure teams demo and publish their products, right? I can't tell you how many places I've been to where it's like, oh, this random engineer did this cool thing, and we kind of use this off to the side. But here's the other thing that everybody else uses. But this other thing that this engineer does is kind of cool off to the side. It's actually what everybody else needs to do, but they just use it. They built it in their spare time, right? Like, again, you have to have this culture of show me the execution. Talking to other people, not only to my stakeholders, but talking to the people around your organization that could potentially benefit from the work that you've done. Sounds simple, but I promise you, a lot of people just don't do that. And then if you build an artifact, whether that is with code, whether that is SQL or Python or your notebooks or all that, just use GitHub, right? Like, do not have this thing sitting on your machine forever. Put it up in GitHub, write a README, and say, this is what this particular piece of SQL is for. This is what this particular Python is for, right? Like, so that way somebody in your organization can pick that up and see it, optimize it, use it, whatever it is they want to. But again, it's a sharing culture and community that's out there.